Drop 'em in the box, drop 'em in the box, drop 'em in the box. When them pills try to get at you, drop 'em in the box, drop 'em in the box, drop 'em in the box. Don't leave 'em on the countertop, drop 'em in the box, drop 'em in the box, drop 'em in the box. No cure for disease of addiction, but our best bet is to start with prevention.
How's everyone doing? Welcome to the Recovery Clinic live with your hosts, Chris Dickey and Jimmy McGill. We're so glad you're here. We've got a great show to talk about, or we had a great show planned for you tonight. I hope your TV dinners are warm and you're kicking back, relaxing, and getting ready for an awesome discussion. Remember, the Recovery Clinic is a way for all of you to engage and continue to find support and accountability in recovery. We always remember that we need to stay connected during this time. We're together during this time. It's really easy to break a twig by itself, right? But it's very difficult to get a group of twigs together and break them. And that's the concept of this show. We want to stay together and be a part of each other's lives and, you know, celebrate things that are happening that are awesome and help pick people up that are down right now. So if you haven't, a reminder to go smash that follow button and like button. Jimmy, you always do this. It's a part of it. It's a part of it, right?
I'm making sure everybody's awake. You know, if I'm talking and you can't hear me.
Yeah. We're in a silent movie.
Yeah. Hey, listen up, folks. As always, remember, we're a very public page, and so what you type in the comments will be there forever. So be mindful of that. We're so glad that you're joining us. Like Chris said, if you haven't already liked our page, please do so. You may want to share the video. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the most famous and effective popular pathways to sustainable long-term recovery. Last week, Chris and I had the state drug director, and so we talked about MAT, which is medically assisted recovery and treatment. And today we're going to talk about, well, it's my personal pathway. Chris, what about you?
It's my personal too. I've tried many other ones, but this one seemed to be the most effective for me.
Right. Yeah. I tried a lot of stuff. I know a dude one time that bought a coconut from a voodoo lady. That's how desperate he was to not use anymore, right? Like he didn't want to believe in the 12 steps, didn't want to believe in God or anything else. Hey, can y'all stop that?
But
I'm sorry, that's my dogs. My dogs know the 12 steps, right? And so he wraps his coconut up in aluminum foil with some hair from his hair. He pulls it out twice a day. He paid the voodoo lady $450 for this pineapple, not a cantaloupe. And his pineapple's wrapped up, Chris, in full hair. And he pulls it out and he says this little chant 2 or 3 times a day. He didn't want to believe in recovery, but he believed in the pineapple. You know.
You know way too many details of this story for this not to be you.
It was not me. But I met the guy at a convention and I heard him sharing it. And I was like, man, that's true desperation, right?
Yeah.
Like the pineapple.
Absolutely. I want to try everything.
Right.
Besides something that might be able to help me most. I remember a judge looking at me and saying, Chris, you can either do 45 days in jail or you can do a week in those meetings. And I'm like, about it, you know.
Right. A lot of people get clean with a nudge from the judge. You know what I mean? It's like the drug courts. They really kind of work, you know, because they require people to get in a new community, a new fellowship. And so, what do you know about what we're talking about today in the 12 steps?
Well, I mean, that's the way I do it. But real quick, before we dive in, let's say a little welcome. We got Crystal Vincent Holland, Friday Night Fun Recovery Style. I think that my Fridays are a little bit more low key than they used to be.
Right.
But I prefer it that way now. We have a lot of fun. Welcome, Sherry. Hey, Joe. See you, Amy.
Ashley.
Yeah.
Teresa.
And
JD Skelton.
JD got that first comment in. He's trying to flex on the other people, you know.
Well, JD wants you to know that he was the first one to comment. That's that natural state stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm here for you, boss.
yeah. Yeah.
He gonna make sure that you know he's in the house.
He was waiting. He was waiting. 5:55.
Shout out to Joe Ray Sanders. I actually got clean with Joe Ray. We were at the same Kempree house together, and so that's where. And then, of course, you know, the men's stuff. I really got involved with the other guys in recovery, and so
Amazing that you know that's what we're talking about, right? Finding a connection, finding the web of support, entangling ourselves within that web of support. Because, quite frankly, Jimmy, sometimes I want to take my power back. Sometimes I get into action where it's kind of like I'm running for the cliff, right? And I mean, addiction for me is me. You know, I have this mind that wanders back to a drug or a drink, and untreated alcoholism or addiction, I don't know that I have got this mind that wanders back to a drink.
Yeah.
The more tangled up I am in recovery, in the people that are in recovery, it's harder for me to untangle, quite frankly. I mean, there's something to that.
Yeah. You know, hey, I get it. Yeah. And so for me, I came at step one and being powerless. By the time I got introduced to the 12 steps, like I had been beat down mentally, spiritually, emotionally, right? Like to the point where I was so willing, Chris, to do whatever they said would work. You know, they could have told me to run butt naked from Little Rock to Jacksonville, and I would have done it in a snowstorm, right? Like I didn't care. And they said, put the pen to the paper, give yourself a break, try something new. And I did that. And all of a sudden I started experiencing some transformation. Like I was learning about the real problem, which was me. It was the drug use was just a symptom, right? Like I was the problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, step one for me is all about honesty. And to get to that place where I was open to be honest with myself took a lot. I mean, it almost cost me my life. That's the crazy thing about this, of what we're talking about. You know, I drank when I didn't want to. I always drank more than I wanted to, and once I started, I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that my whole life was involved and built around getting and using more, right?
Yeah, use to live and live to use. It's real simple.
So one of the biggest things that I had to like face was, and I think a lot of people do this. I think that I had this idea that if I just take the substances that I was using and remove them from me, take them away out of my body, then I'm going to be okay, right? That's a logical, reasonable thing to think, that if I just stop doing this, I'm going to be fine. But let me tell you.
That's insanity, Chris.
Yeah. So let me tell you what happened.
Yeah.
I got more crazy.
Yeah. Because you don't know how to behave. All you know how to do is use.
Yeah. So you take the substances out of me. I'm, I've heard it said stark raving sober, right?
Right.
If you take, and I've heard it said this way, if you sober up a drunken horse thief, what do you have? A sober horse thief.
Yeah.
I was tied up in a lot of behaviors that I didn't realize took me back to a drink or a drug. And so that's part of step one that I had to be honest with. And not only was I powerless over these things, but my life was unmanageable. And what that means to me, what unmanageability means to me is, Jimmy, I can't guarantee you or our viewers that I'm going to not put one in me today. I can't 100% guarantee it.
All right.
I wake up in the morning and I'm going to do some things, and I can't guarantee you that I'm going to go through that full 24 hours without putting a foreign substance in my body.
Right.
Manageability.
Right. Right. So when I think about step one, right, like you've got, there's a whole bunch. And so, see, the way I dove into the 12 steps was a very thorough like questionnaire, the disease side of it. It broke down the disease being a mental obsession, a physical compulsion, a physical allergy, and what happens when I go around things I'm allergic to, and it dove into the blaming and the rationalization, and then the powerlessness being one side of it, the two forms of unmanageability. And that's something a lot of people skip over, Chris. You say unmanageable, and they immediately think outward unmanageability, right? But what
Yeah.
about the internal? The
Uh-huh.
the crying on a dog food commercial, hearing certain songs on the radio and just starting to boo-hoo and don't know why you're crying. Like that's that internal unmanageability. And not being able to explain the emotions and why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. And so there's a lot to step one. It's more than just saying I'm powerless and unmanageable, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the I had someone in my family that also is in recovery, and they said that they had to get to step 0 before they could get to step 1. And I really like that idea because it's like I had to get to a place that I was totally leveled. I was completely hopeless and desperate. And then I was able to take other people's suggestions for me. And part of that is step 1 for me. If I'm being honest completely, then giving me my life and my will is like giving a baby a scalpel.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do it. And so it was a rude awakening for me because I want to be in control. I want to be in charge. I want to take my destiny and go do these things that I just posted something on my page that said, I would get so drunk and I would envision a world of personal growth and excellence for my life, but then in the morning I'd be too hungover to carry any of those things out.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I was using, I thought everything would be okay while I was using, right? And then but for me, Chris, addiction finally took me to a spot where I could no longer deny the nature of who I was, right? Like it literally reduced me to this animalistic like lifestyle to where I only came out at night. I was like a freaking raccoon. I thought I was the cutest thing in the city, the flyest thing since an airplane, and I was dirty, stinky, and pilfering through trash.
Trash panda.
Yeah, a trash panda. I was the epitome of my disease. Like I was caught in the grip of something that I could no longer deny. And when I hit that bottom, when I got to a place out of sheer desperation, I sought help, right? And it took that because I was always rationalizing, justifying, denying, blaming, and it never occurred to me that it was the drug use.
Yeah, sheer desperation.
Yeah. Do you hear that? I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, it's the same. And that's what I love about recovery is that I came in totally beat down, broken. I like what someone said, surrender. I mean, it was kind of like that, right?
Right.
Which, look, if I had the power to not drink, if I had the power just to totally change my life and put it in another direction to where I was, then I wouldn't need the rest of those 12 steps, right? If I had the power, I would just be able to say, look, my life was messed up. I've learned my lesson, then I'm going to go on. I've learned enough. I have the knowledge and I'm going to apply it.
Yeah.
Well, that's not me. Some people can do that.
Yeah, it's not me either.
And so if I'm completely broken and surrendering and I'm powerless,
right.
Thank God that there's a step 2 that talks about hope to find another power to lead me, right?
Right. Yeah, step 1 really puts that magnifying glass on the need for step 2. But before we jump over to step 2, there's some stuff in step 1, like those spiritual principles, and the way I work the steps, that's what I learned, right? Like there were 5 spiritual principles that I would have to live by if I wanted to sustain long-term recovery, right? And the first one was exactly what you were just talking about, honesty, right? Like that was literally my first experience in recovery was honesty, right? Like the time when I said, "Hey, my name's Jimmy and I'm a person of addiction," right? Like that was the first time I told the truth in a long time, and so my first relationship in the rooms of recovery wasn't with a man, wasn't with my sponsor, wasn't with a woman. It was with a spiritual principle called honesty. And then you had open mindedness, willingness, acceptance, and humility. And those 5 principles are attached to step 1. And if you're working step 1 and you don't know those, if you don't have that information and you don't know how to apply that information to get the transformation, you're working step 1 in vain.
Yeah. Yo, what up, Joseph, Alex, Michael? Jessica, I'm so glad that you are starting the steps. I wish you much joy in the process of discovery. That's another thing too, Jimmy, is, over time, and, I had a person in my life that taught me that, I'm not getting a grade on this, because part of my inventory was discovering about myself was perfection and trying to find that one nugget that I'm going to be able to unwrap and then set off on this path, and I'm never going to have to do anything else. It was
same.
Yeah, I was waiting for the dean of the Recovery Fellowship to award me my certificate of completion, right? And
right.
This person taught me that there's, once I go through these once I go through these things, I'm going to be a different person. And then there's going to be a time where I'm going to go through them again and again. Yeah. And I've done that. Looking back on that first pass, I'm like you, like I hadn't been honest with me or you in a long time.
Right.
I practice cash register honesty today. So if I accidentally walk off with the pin at the bank, I've got to turn around and go get it back. I don't take a risk with letting anything a foothold in my life like that, right? And I'm being extreme, but I mean, I practice that kind of honesty.
Right, and I love it, right? And so, what about surrender? Ashley Costa said in the comments a while ago about surrendering, and you mentioned surrendering too, right? Like, what are we truly surrendering to in step 1? So, if you're watching and the steps aren't your pathway, it's important that you know the culture that is associated with the 12 steps also revolves around sponsorship, which is another person working me through the steps. It revolves around meeting attendance, a fellowship of 12 steppers that is a like-minded community, right? That all practice the same pathway. And so what I have to surrender to in step 1 is the fact that I cannot recover alone. If I could have, I would have done it way before now, right? And the biggest myth that you're going to hear is willpower, and so I surrender to the fact that, okay, I'm going to be a person of addiction for the rest of my life, but it doesn't define me, Chris. Like, I'm so much more than just a person in recovery, right? Like, I'm a father, a husband, a worker, all this stuff. And I can't recover alone. I need this fellowship, this community of like-minded people who want to be positive influences on me. And together we can and will recover one day at a time.
Right. And you bring up a sponsor. And for those that may not know what a sponsor is, I've always said it like this. It's kind of like, here I am. I was drunk in a belligerent blackout, and I come to, and I'm in a different country, right? Mm-hmm. Sponsor is someone who knows the language of the country I'm in, who knows the landscape of the country I am in.
I love that. How did you come up with that?
And knows how to navigate me out of that country to get me home, right? And so,
Español, c'est pas bien merci, mais Chris.
I was in a country.
You don't know how you got there because you're too drunk to remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Carrie, I'm so glad you're working on step 2. We're going to get to that in a second. Hang with us. We got some. But it's kind of like this, there's a documentary right now about Michael Jordan. And so I use this analogy too, is like, if Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players to ever play the sport,
right?
If he was coming to me and saying, hey, I want to teach you free throws, what am I going to say? No, I've got this. I'm going to do it on my own.
No, you're going to tell him straight up. You'd rather have Steph Curry.
Well, yeah. So But it's like if I see somebody in a meeting of the 12 steps, and someone has what I want, why would I say no to a guide that's going to teach me how to do some? But that's addiction, right? I'm going to say no. I've got life. It's not normal, Jimmy, to run away from a group of people who loved me too much. I've did that my whole life. I did that my whole life, and so step one for me is also about finally being willing to do something different. I had to do something different, not something Chris was convenient for me to do, and I went through that process too. That I'm only going to do this because a lot of pain, or it's convenient for me to do it. No, I do this all the time.
Do you think you had any reservations when you were working step one?
But yeah, the first time through, I mean,
what was it?
I putting conditions on my recovery.
Right.
If my mom dies, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. If I have the loss of my daughter, I don't know if I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
Right? Right. So I was taught, don't put conditions on your recovery.
Right. Absolutely.
And so those are the types of reservations that I work through. And what I was going to talk about earlier when Carrie made the comment is, the steps are a process of discovery for me.
Yeah.
So I get to know who I am.
Right.
And it's kind of like this blind date, right? Like I'm all nervous. I don't know who this person's going to be. And, I'm going through the steps and I'm meeting myself for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like that analogy actually, because it's kind of narcissistic.
Yeah. When we surrender to this and we accept our addiction for what it is, right? Like there's a profound inner peace that I experienced, and I didn't see recovery as a chore. I didn't see it as a burden to have to go to meetings and work steps. I saw it as an opportunity and a privilege because I get to be rewarded with the life that I'd always neglected, for the first time ever. And step one, put that magnifying glass on it, right? Like I learned in step one that I was too powerless to do anything about my disease, Chris. There was nothing I could do by myself. I was not powerful enough to overcome it. And then like what you were talking about with step two, that's where the hope came in. There was a solution. I can be restored to sanity. I can recover.
Yeah, I can. I don't know about you, but I'd sit in these meetings early on, and I felt like my family had gotten with some of the members of this fellowship and told them my story, because they'd be in these meetings talking at me. I felt like they were saying exactly the things that I had done in the way I had felt.
They've been following you and documenting everything you've been doing.
I felt attacked.
Because they knew you so good without knowing you.
Yes. Isn't that crazy?
Yes. Yes.
So step one is all about, I throw my hands up. I've tried this. Hopefully I don't have anything else to try.
Right.
And so, bringing us to step two is, coming to believe in something that is bigger than me.
Right. Absolutely. And so for those of you watching that may not know what step two is, it's we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And so let's talk about insanity, Chris, right? Like there's this textbook terminology cliche that, insanity is repeating the same thing over and over. And that's true. But when you're talking about addiction, insanity goes way more deeper than that, right? Like insanity is knowing that the PO is going to lock you up Monday morning if you come in there and fail that drug test, and then hitting the pipe in the parking lot of the parole office Monday morning before you go in there, and you're hoping that by the grace of God, she won't be there this morning, or
You're
she
gonna
forgot.
slide under the radar.
Yeah, you might skate on by, or she might be busy with another client. That's insanity. Insanity for me was being stuck on stupid in the same room for 6 days straight, Chris. Stinking, clothes sticking to me, socks smelling like Fritos, hard as hell when you take them off. You've been pilfering through the same chest of drawers for 72 hours straight, like something new is going to appear. Insanity is here, Chris. Let me fix your iPhone 11 with my butter knife. That's insanity.
Yeah, and it's so ridiculous that we have to smile about it. If we can't laugh about those things that we've done, we would still be, feeling that insanity.
Yeah.
It's not fun living through, but looking back on it, carpet surfing and all that stuff.
Did you carpet pick, Chris?
Yeah,
Did you ever find anything other than an old toenail?
oh, button in some lint.
I can't count the times I've seen somebody.
We love that you're here with us, Tanya, and congratulations on your 4th year. Check this out. So here's some insanity. She said that she's recovering from a meth addiction, and so I've got to say this. I was talking to a friend, and he was telling me this one time he went to the dope house, and he's looking to score, and it's out in this country, and he's going down the road, and he pulls up to this place. And he's knocking on the door. No one's there. And he's looking around and he's getting impatient. And all of a sudden he hears this. Bzzz. What is that? What is that? And he turns around and the guy's coming out of a tree on a zip line.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he'd been watching him the whole time. So, that's insanity.
Yeah.
Thinking the SWAT and the news and the government is watching you.
Man, I remember, Chris, because I was always in a very poor environment, right? Like economically wise, right? Like, I was in the projects. And so I can remember the cheap tile in the shower and, the little patterns in the tile. I would be so high, stuck in a psychosis that I would see lettering. I would think that whoever was in the shower before me had left messages for whoever came behind me, because that was how they were communicating back and forth. And I was the focal point. I was everybody's agenda. Never mind the fact that I was broke, didn't have a pot to pee in, didn't have anything anyone wanted, Chris. But the second I used, it was like somebody with unlimited resources that I had wronged, and everybody answered to that person, and I was their agenda. I was the target. I was a cuckoo bird, man.
Yeah, what were the messages?
All kinds of stuff. And it always revolved around the girl I was dating. She was key.
Yeah. So here's another story that I guys, I share a lot of stories to try and get my points across. So I hope you like them. This little drunk guy is marooned on a desert island, and he finds this genie bottle, and he rubs it. The genie pops out, and he says, "You've only got 2 wishes. This is a different kind of genie." And the little drunk guy looks up at him and says, "You know what? I think I want a bottle of the best stuff that you've got, and it automatically refills when it's done." And he goes, "Here's your bottle." The guy jugs it all the way down, and it goes gluck, 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 and then bubbles right back up, and it's full. And the genie, "What do you want for your next wish, your last wish?" And he goes, "I think I'll have another one of those." That was my thinking, right? I could never get enough, and would go to any lengths. I mean, over in Oregon, where I was in active addiction for a lot of years, you can get 5 cents for a pop can. So we'd go pop can hunting and go to the grocery store, and I was stealing pop cans. 5 or 6 hours collecting pop cans for $40, and just going to any length to, check out, instead of like, oh, I guess I could get a job and spend the same amount of hours working.
Yeah.
I was unemployable. So
Yeah, well, we all were, you know what I mean? Like, uh, yeah, dude. I also, Chris, I remember the first time I worked through step two, I remember making a list of sane behaviors, right? And so I actually have my sponsees do the same thing today. Like when we're working through step two, uh, I'm trying to be restored to a level of sanity, right? Like somebody said, your pop cans, really, Chris?
Hey, that aluminum is semi-precious metals.
Yeah, yeah. Did you
You didn't
make a
have to go to
list
the
of
you
sane
didn't have to go to the
behaviors?
scrapyard. Yeah, yeah.
What was on it that you weren't doing?
What were my insane behaviors?
No, I'm saying so when I worked step two, I had to make a list of sane behaviors.
Right.
I'm praying to be restored to something, so I need to know what it is I want to be restored to. So my list had brushing your teeth, paying your bills, taking a shower, picking up behind myself, just stuff that I'd spent years neglecting.
Yeah. So same thing. I can remember um, the first time I joined recovery, I was living at my mom's house, and this is what kind of put me in my place. I was going to meetings and I was doing the dance, right?
Yeah.
And then one night I got in a fight with my sister, and it was a blow up, and my mom finally just unleashed on me.
Right.
She's shorter than me, but she put me up against the boards like in a hockey game and just wailed on me. And I had like 4.5 months time in recovery, and it all came to head, during that moment that, I didn't blame her for doing that. I could
Right.
finally, for one of the first times in my life, I saw who I was through her eyes.
Right.
And I saw all the insane behaviors. Like I was telling my mom live with and telling her what she was doing wrong, but I couldn't take a dirty plate and go put it in the dish or clean it, and so all that insanity kind of finally caught up with me, and I could see it.
Yeah.
Definitely uncomfortable. It was not who I wanted to be. But that had to happen for me to go in the other direction.
Right.
Hey, what's up, man?
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. I was sitting here thinking while you were talking about that, right? Like, that spiritual principle that really grabbed a hold of me in step two was hope, and it replaced the desperation that step one left in me. Right? Like step one left this feeling of desperation, this void that I was so screwed up, and then step two introduced me to this hope that I can be restored. There is a solution, and I need a power greater than me to restore me to sanity, Chris. And so listening to you talk about it, right? Like that reaffirms and reinforces the concept about what I'm saying is if step one told me that I'm too powerless to recover by myself, the concept of having to have a higher power restore me to sanity, I've got to have something stronger than addiction in order to combat that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. If there's a higher power, there's a lower power.
Absolutely. And there's a difference between a power greater than myself and an ultimate higher power, right?
Sure. We talk about it. Part of that theory that is there is that if you and I pick a problem that we have, any problem, pick one out of the deck and put it on our viewers to try and help us overcome. That's the concept of it.
Yeah.
That we're all going to help each other figure this solution out, right?
Right.
And that's the concept behind that step for me, because it brings me hope. It's kind of like at the beginning of our show, the intro, when you see all the choppy water and it's dark, it's rainy and it's stormy. I was lost at sea, And that's step one for me. I was
Yeah.
I was dying out there, and then finally I see the lighthouse, which is step two, and
Right.
it allows me to get in there. It allows me to find the land and join the other black sheep. you know, it's like I think we're a lot of black sheep, and we finally found our herd. Right, we belong.
Yeah. And then we become the lighthouse. You know what I mean? We become something attractive, and that light is a beacon of hope, and that we are that hope. Like, come over here, there's safe land. I love that analogy. That's good. Did you come up with that, or did the screenwriter write that?
I just throw this stuff around, man. I love.
Yeah.
I've got props. I like
What kind of prop? Okay. There's your world.
all worldwide, right?
What's
So-
that blue one right there?
That's the ocean.
Right there. That's not an ocean.
No, check this out. See this? This is, you want to talk about insanity? I was over here in Oregon,
Yeah.
jumped on a Greyhound one way down to Miami, Florida, in hopes that I was going to become a real estate mogul.
Were you drunk?
I was hammered. I didn't come to till I got down to Dallas, Texas, thinking, what did I just do? And I learned the hard way that wherever I go, I end up.
So, had you been having previous thoughts about being a real estate agent, or were you just drunk enough to where you were going to go sell somebody their own house?
No, I was actually thinking about becoming a real estate agent, and thought, it's just not working over here. I'm gonna go to Florida and do it. But I mean, I was sabotaging myself.
Yeah.
For me.
So, how'd you end up in Arkansas?
I have a grandmother who's no longer with us, but I called my mom from Oregon and asked. I begged to be let back in for the bailout, right?
Right.
She finally had enough of me, and that was the last bridge I burned. And she said, "Son, I love you very much, but you cannot come. You cannot come back here. I cannot continue to watch yourself in this destructive state of mind. And I hope you figure it out, but I can't be a part of it." And so I laid down there for a couple more days, and the fetal position, and that it didn't feel like a gift, but it ended up being a gift that gave me new life. You talked about rationalizing and blaming, and I had this meter my whole life that when I didn't like something and something didn't go my way, I'd blame you, and I was a victim to my circumstances. And so when I'm looking around the room that I was in down there, I couldn't blame anybody but me. And I finally was able to see the security footage of me pushing over that first domino on every problem I've ever had, that I was the first one who pushed that domino. And so that allowed me to see objectively of what I was doing. And I could actually, I'm glad that it's not other people that are my problem, because you know what? If you were my problem, if people in here were my problem, if Miguel was my problem, I'd have to wait a long time for them to change for me to get better.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I'm the owner of my misery, because I can change it.
Yeah. So, how long did it take you to come to change your thinking, right? What had to change in your thinking for you to get to that point to where you realized that you were the problem?
What had to happen was, unfortunately, I, booked a one-way ticket down to Miami, Florida from Portland, Oregon. But years before, years of trying something,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. And so, what do you think has to happen for you to start trying to be restored for sanity? What happened? What was your experience in step 2?
So my favorite line of step 2, when someone is trying to explain their experience, it without fail, Jimmy, and you correct me if I'm wrong, viewers, that I always hear somebody say, "and then something happened." Without fail, when someone's trying to describe their experience with step 2, they're always going say, and then something happened. That's the same thing for me. That, you know, I can remember that I was at my lowest point. I hooked up with this person that was trying to help me dig out of this hole by giving me suggestions.
Right.
I started taking these suggestions, and then something happened. I'm telling you, that's exactly
what happened.
I started, I started moving in the right direction.
You started believing.
I started acting in a certain direction, right? And then my mind started moving in that direction. And then I woke up one day and my life was moving in that direction. And I believed exactly. That's what I was hoping you would say. I started to believe that this worked, that there was something else. Because we're going to get involved in this next part, which is step 3. I felt worthless, man. I'm a 10-time loser. My mom always said that I was an underachiever. Like, I really knew how to mess things up.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that look at the name down here. If you guys want, you know, we're part of the Recovery Clinic. We host this 2 times a week, but Jimmy and I have our own pages. His is at Jimmy McGill Live. Go follow and like his page. And mine's at the 10th second chance. I'm on my 10th second chance, man. And I'm not doing it this time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So, like, I felt worthless. I felt like I couldn't get a purpose. I felt like all this potential I had, I've wasted it. You know, what a bad place to be in my early 20s. You know, I mean, I was at this jumping off point. Like, if I couldn't get this together, I'm going to off myself. You know, and that's the madness of addiction. It just takes and takes and takes until there's nothing left.
Well, that's what you're doing when you're caught in the grip of addiction. It doesn't matter if you're the little old lady popping game on the doctor one script at a time, or if you're the full-blown IV drug user that's homeless sleeping on the street. Like, we're all killing ourselves one dose at a time, whether it's a shot of dope, a pipe load, or a pill. We're killing, or a drink. We're killing ourselves on an installment plan in small increments. That's what addiction is. And, you know, it's as insane as me walking up to somebody and saying, "Hey, Chris, would you mind giving me a heart attack real quick?" It's insanity. That's what we're doing, man. That's what we're doing. And, you know, I'm grateful that I've been one of the fortunate few to make it out. And, you know, never before in man's entire history has such a program been proving itself like this. You know, it's the only thing that worked for me. And so in step 1, I learned that I couldn't do it. Step 2, I learned that something could. And you know, let's dig into step 3. You know, let's talk about that decision. What do you know about making a decision?
I know a lot about making some wrong decisions.
Oh, yeah, me too. And I'll tell you, my favorite decision to talk about was when I made one to be a volunteer instead of a victim, right? Like, for a long time, I blamed everything on my circumstances, my environment. I used to say that old stupid line. I got it from Tupac. I'm a product of my environment. You know, come on, man, get off the gas. I'm a product of my stupidity and my decisions. Like, somewhere along the line, Chris Dickey, I made a choice to give the dope man everything I had or have it took. So I volunteered, you know?
Yep. So by the grace that I'm still here as an overdose survivor, I have also, you know, been in trouble with law enforcement, you know, like over 12 times in 1 year. It was a pretty, you know, out of control spiral. Unemployable, had 25 jobs in 5 years. It became a game that, you know, I would try to quit before I got fired. I was, you know, I knew when the heat was on, and you know, I thought that I had finally done it. I couldn't overcome it, right? And that was the bad part. Is, you know, getting to a place where I had just closed my mind completely to anything new. And what a dark place that was. And then, you know, pushing everybody who ever loved me away and having kind of concern for me, pushing them away. And part of the getting there, and then someone taking the time to invest in me and seeing me down in that dump and sticking their hand out and saying, grab on. It's time to get up from here. We're going to go in this direction. We're going to start doing some things different.
Yeah.
Was the decision I had to make, right? Step 3. What we're talking about, the principle behind that is faith. And that, for me, that first pass was blind faith, because I was just now seeing that, all right, I'm doing a few things that you're saying. I'm seeing it. I'm believing it. Now I'm faced with this decision that I'm going to have to do some work, right?
Yeah.
I'm allergic to work.
Yeah, and talking about that is the central action of step 3, making that decision, right? So when you start talking about making that decision, it's important for the viewers to know that if you don't act on that decision, at best all you had was a good thought. I can sit at home and say, you know what, Chris, I'm going to get a job. I've made up my mind. I'm getting off my butt today. I'm going out there. I'm going to look for a job. And then if I don't leave the house, I ain't did nothing but had a brain fart. At best, a good thought. That's it. Right? Like it's what's that old cliche about the old riddle with the frogs? You got 3 frogs sitting on a log. One decides to jump off. 2 decides to jump off. How many are left on the log? 3. Why are 3 frogs left on the log?
They just made a decision.
They didn't follow through with it.
Exactly. And so I can be willing to eat all day. I can be starving, sitting on the side of my bed. But if I don't move and get up and do something to try and overcome my hunger, then I'm going to starve. So willingness without action, or faith without works, is what? Dead. And so I think for me, and I don't know if the you all would relate to this, but when I have a moment of clarity, when I am willing to take some action, that willingness is short-lived. There's like a time frame on that, and it's going like this. It's closing. And so I've got to do something to build this foundation that we're talking about. So steps 1, 2, and 3 are our foundation steps.
Yeah.
And I've got to do some work around those internally to build this foundation that I'm going to be able to stand on when I go further into the steps, because how well I make a decision here and follow up with this decision is how well I'm going to make an effort to do the rest of the steps, right? And so, and I know that to be true because I had a person that would always remind me, says, you remember the decision you made to go to any length to recover. Because there were times where I didn't want to make this amends. There were some times I didn't want to admit this truth. There were some times that I didn't want to let go of that resentment. And then this person that loved me, that cared more about my life than hurting my feelings, would say, do you remember in step 3 when you made this decision to do anything it took to recover? I have to go back and think, oh yeah.
Yeah, any length. Right.
Is it worth it? And then I have to make that decision again.
Right. Yeah, I think I work step 1, 2, and 3 every day. Right? Like I get up, I do my spiritual study, my prayer and meditation, and my step work, right? Like that's me saying that I'm powerless. I can't do anything about it. God can. I need to let him, And step 3 is so critical, right? Because we've acted on self-will for so long, abusing our right to make choices and decisions. And so that's what step 3 is all about for me, is letting go of my self-will and getting into God's will, because left up to my own devices, I will self-destruct, Chris. Like my will is bad. And I know when I'm in my will, and that's when I'm trying to control, manage, and manipulate and fix everything around me, right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm not wanting someone to act a certain way, that's my self-will. Like, and in early recovery, I learned about it by comparison to an obsessive boyfriend, right? Like if you were telling your girlfriend what to wear, what not to wear, you're in your self will instead of letting her be who God wanted her to be, right?
Ooh,
Like, yeah, that's me wanting to fix, manage, and control. And so I have to turn mine over. And so one thing my sponsor's got 29 years of recovery, right? And he's told me, sometimes I can be in self will and do some things that doesn't harm anybody, but is it something that God wants me to do? Is it God's will? Right? Like, does he want me in an atmosphere where people are talking not so positive about other people? Does he want me indulged in a group of people who are cussing nonstop and being negative influences on other people? See what I mean? Like,
hating on some people, just hating.
right. Like, is that the environment for God's will for me? Is that his will?
That's a good question.
Right.
Hey, so congratulations, Justin. That's awesome. I'm so happy to read that you have 30 months clean.
That's cool.
That's a beautiful thing, my brother.
Yeah.
So one of the things too, someone taught me that my will and my action, or my will and my life, are my thoughts and my actions, right? And I was so I can really it was easier for me to say, okay, I can really turn over my thoughts and my actions because those need a lot of help. And so one of the things too, I talked about, like, God really only has an interest to help the neighbors. In my mind, it was, this beautiful family on the other side of the fence with, the dad had this evangelical hair and he's flipping burgers and his son's kicking the ball around and the wife comes out and says, the dessert's ready. And it's just this like beautiful family and they're talking to each other and communicating and loving. And it was always away from me. I couldn't be a part of that, right? That's the crazy idea that I had. And I've always made it to where it was out of reach for me.
Yeah.
And so I had to, what was suggested to me was to write down everything that I thought about God.
Right.
And then after I get done writing that, I write down the idea that I would like God to be in my life, right? And so this is a really important thing that was a part of my story. I did that. I spent 3 pages writing down all of this toxic ideological mess that was garbage in my head of what I thought God was. And God's relationship with me was unattainable. Like, God didn't want anything to do with me personally. Like, I believed in the idea of God, but God didn't want any personal things to do with me. And so that's what this all was about, right? I wrote it down. And then I wrote the idea that, God's loving, God's compassionate, God is alive and wants to be a part of my life and can help me overcome anything and wants me to come to him.
Right.
And so I did that. And let me tell you, I was, when I did that, I didn't have a license. I had that bike that I had to, keep pedaling because that front tire was crooked. And if I stopped it, and so before I went to this meeting, it was nighttime and I was getting ready to ride my bike. And I looked up and I said this little prayer. And for the first time in my whole life, I was 19 years old. I can remember it was yesterday. I felt connected to something.
Yeah.
Like it was no longer past my arm's length. It was in me. I felt the connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what a beautiful thing. And guess what? You know what that is? That's seeking. That's finding. That's seeking, that's asking, that's finding. And it's everything that I was taught growing up.
Yeah.
But I finally, was open to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Ultimately, what it comes down to is if I seek God's will and the strength to carry it out, my life will be better. You know what I mean? Because my will is forced results. That's me forcing the results. And so, I seek God's will and the strength to be obedient and carry that will out. We're pushing the time, Chris. We're coming down to the last 4 minutes. What do you want? So right now we're on the series, right? The 12 steps. And then after this, we'll go. So I believe is Wednesday's show. Wednesday at 11, we'll go live again. Now that'll be on steps 4, 5, 6, and 7. Is that right? What's that on?
I think we do it next Friday.
Next Friday. Okay.
Yeah. We'll do the series. We'll pick it up next Friday. But I wanted to say thank you to Sherry. That's great. Also, congrats to Carrie on 15 months. Oh, almost. We don't do it almost, do we?
We don't give no credit. This ain't the dope house.
No frontsies.
The
No frontsies.
recovery clinic. You got to get it before you get it.
No, so happy for you, Carrie, and congrats to Joe as well. I want to share one more story about this the God thing. If it makes you uncomfortable, I'm sorry. I was super uncomfortable. I was super angry at God. But here's a story that I heard not too long ago. Actually, I was probably 9 years sober when I heard this story, and it really means a lot to me, and I'm going to share it with you. So I was and this guy was visiting from Canada, and he was telling this story I'm about to share. He was on vacation in Alaska, right? And one morning he's doing his prayer and meditation, and he's out there and he's, just looking around. And Alaska is this, beautiful state, and he's looking at this, this picturesque landscape, the snow-capped mountains, the beautiful blue rivers and lakes, the greenery, the trees. And he is looking up and saying, and just has this idea. He's thinking, wow, this is so beautiful, this God's creation. I wonder what God's looking at. You know what I mean? Right. In his meditation. And then he's had the same idea. He's like, God's looking at this beautiful picturesque landscape, the snow-capped mountains, the beautiful blue rivers and lakes, the trees that just go way up into the sky. And him looking down at him, his creation. That's and when I heard that story, it really, really hit home for me, that because I don't know about you, Jimmy, but I thought, man, if I'm a good boy and I do what I'm supposed to do and finish my chores, then God's going to give me his grace.
Yeah.
But the story says, for me, that it's inherent. I don't have to do anything to gain God's love. Right. It's born with it. And I hope that helps somebody, because it really, really helped me.
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that, Chris. Absolutely. So,
and when you always say closing thoughts, those are my closing thoughts. Now I'm going to turn it on you.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it, right? Like, my entire life is full of impossibilities that only testify to God's glory, right? Like, I would not be where I'm at today if he didn't have a bigger plan. And so, tune in Thursday or Wednesday at 11 a.m. We're out of time today. Thank you, everybody who joined us and watched.
So glad you could come at the 9th hour, Kyle.
Yeah. And so, our new time is Wednesday at 11 and Friday at 6. And so we're totally glad to have you guys. Please share and like our page. We love you. Thanks for your support.
Reach out and ask for help if you need it.
Yeah, email us. We'll help. See you guys later.